Welcome to Module 3 of the Inclusion of Special Populations Training, 703 KAR 5:070. My name is Krista Mullins, and I am a Program Consultant in the Office of Assessment and Accountability. Module 3 will discuss conditions for specific accommodations. There will be some allegation prevention and best practices tips, and a check for understanding at the end of the module. Now we are going to discuss conditions for specific accommodations on state tests and the rules that govern what can and cannot be done when providing those accommodations as laid out by the Inclusion of Special Populations regulation. On the screen are the most used, but not only, accommodations allowed on state testing. We will discuss each one from the regulation individually. Assistive technology is allowed and encouraged on state testing. The assistive technology may not reproduce, transmit, save, replicate, or serve as a pass-through for secure test materials. Program planners should always evaluate under what conditions a student will use technology and clearly describe that in the student's plan. An example, if a student uses a magnification device for paper testing, that should be clearly stated in the plan. When assistive technology is not appropriate, accommodations used will be based on student need and ability level as designated in the IEP or 504 plan. Technology should be considered first in order to help foster independence. The goal is for independence to carry over into post-school activities so that the student will be able to participate in home, further education, and in their communities to the fullest extent possible. Manipulatives are allowed on state-required content assessments, but are required to be a one-to-one testing environment due to the individualized aspect of the accommodation. The rules for manipulatives, as laid out by the inclusion regulation, are as follows. The card shall not contain any written text or labels for the students not taking alternate assessment. This can serve to help organize the student's thoughts. Manipulative placement during assessment should be consistent with where the placement is during instruction. The student has to choose which one they want to use and when they want to use it. Page 9. Alternate assessment students can have writing and labels on their note card as long as it is not content. Pages 9 and 20. Once developed, visually impaired students can have their 3x5 note card increased to a size they can read. Students should have access to every manipulative included on their student plan, whether it will be used or not. For instance, if a student has 20 manipulatives written down on their IEP, all 20 should be provided to the student on test day, and not only the ones the accommodator feels will be most useful for the content. Here are some examples of acceptable and not acceptable manipulatives. The first example is fraction tiles. The acceptable tiles do not have any labels. The not acceptable tiles are labeled. The next example is a number line. Notice that the blank number line is acceptable, but the one labeled is not acceptable. The third example is of a 3x5 note card. The acceptable note card has visual strategies but no labels. Because it has been used in instruction, it will serve to jog the student's memory on the process of solving a problem. The card on the right has labels such as whole, part, and is not acceptable. The AKSA is a scripted test. Most manipulatives and materials needed for the assessment are included. Students may have a 3x5 note card. Here are some examples of acceptable and not acceptable note cards for AKSA. Notice the difference between the general KSA note card and the acceptable AKSA note card. The KSA note cards may not have any writing on them at all, but the AKSA note cards can include basic labels. The acceptable note card has the labels of first, second, third, but does not contain actual process strategy labels to help a student solve the problem. Each individual test will have manuals and guides that determine how a reader is to be provided within the testing environment. Some assessments allow for a human reader. Some assessments allow for only the use of an online reader. Text-to-speech or an online reader is allowed for students with an IEP, 504, or PSP. The reader must have been routinely used in instruction. There must be ongoing documentation showing that, despite intervention and high quality instruction, the student cannot access the reading assessment without a reader. This must not be solely due to cognitive deficits or below grade level performance. If the student is EL, the committee must also consider the impact of English language proficiency on reading. Because the state required content assessment is written in English, the reader will be reading all parts of the test to the student in English. The PSP committee must determine the conditions under which a reader is routinely used during instruction before approving its use in state required assessments. Peer tutors may not serve as readers on state assessments. Anyone not working in a certified position must sign a non-disclosure. Here is more guidance for what a reader may do. Keep in mind, these rules apply to any state test given in any format. Any reader must read the directions, prompts, situations, and passages as they are written in the test. The student does not have to request the reader to begin reading. A reader may not use or provide any additional information even if requested by the student. This includes emphatic speech when reading. A reader may reread any part of the test to the student only after the student requests it for students taking the general assessment. The alternate assessment is scripted, and the test is to be read aloud to the student. The test may require administrators to reread specific sections or scenarios. Additionally, test administrators may determine when a student is not focused and may reread at any time. A reader may not point out parts of questions or tasks skipped by the student. A reader may read individual words or abbreviations mispronounced by a text or screen reader if specifically requested by the student. A scribe is an accommodation for students with a verified disability or EL students who have a proficiency level that impacts writing. Each specific test has administration manuals and guides that detail how and when a scribe may be used on that particular assessment. Keep in mind these rules apply to any scribe in any testing environment. A student must have a verified disability that impacts written expression. Examples may include dysgraphia or neurological disorders that impact the motor skills needed for writing. A student cannot be given a scribe just because they have bad handwriting or write or type slowly. The student plan should include data supporting the need for a scribe. A scribe must be used in routine instruction, but should not be a replacement for instruction or technology. A scribe is always a one-to-one accommodation. For an EL student with a PSP, the committee should document the impact that the student's English language proficiency has on the student, demonstrating what they know on a content test written in English. A scribe shall be provided if the student has not reached proficiency on the annual English language proficiency assessment. A district has discretion of who can serve as a scribe, but peer tutors are not allowed. Any person not working in a certified position who is providing assistance shall read and sign a non-disclosure agreement provided by the department. How a scribe records answers for a student may be different from one assessment to the next, depending on testing platform. Whether the test is paper-based or online, the role of the scribe never changes, and the student must always own their work. The scribe is to record what the student dictates word for word. They are to format, capitalize, and punctuate the student's writing as the student directs. After the product is written, the student is to direct any edits or revisions to the work. The scribe should not alter anything of their own accord. It should all be the student's own ideas, revisions, or edits. For online testing, a scribe may click answers or perform functions necessary for technology-enhanced items, such as drag and drop or selecting from a drop-down menu of options. On paper, the scribe may bubble in answers as directed by the student. A scribe for an EL student is meant to give the student a way to demonstrate their content knowledge while providing an alternate means for them to express their thoughts and knowledge. The scribe is to record what the student dictates word for word. They may not correct grammar, run on sentences, or organization. It should all be the student's own ideas, revisions, or edits. A student may not write in their native language and then have a teacher translate the written work into the test in English. However, the student may dictate their response in their native language to be transcribed into English on the answer document. These allegation preventions discuss best practices when providing the accommodations just discussed. A human reader may be provided in a small group of up to 4 students. For students using the online reader or text to speech function in an assessment, DAX or BAX need to be sure that it is activated for those students prior to the test session beginning. Failure to enable this feature, or conversely, enabling it for students who do not have it on their plan, will lead to an allegation. When scribing for a student, be sure the student is always maintaining ownership of their work. Any assistive technology used, whether it is a communication device, talking calculator, or other technology, must not utilize internet access. If it may be a distraction to other students, such as the online text reader or a talking calculator, headphones may be used or the student may test in an alternate area. It is time for our third check for understanding, which will cover information about the accommodations of technology, manipulatives, reader, and scribe. Please pause the video and take a few minutes to read and answer these yes or no questions, and resume the video so we can discuss. Question 1. May a student who uses a communication device use it for state assessments? The answer is yes. Students using communication devices may use them during the state assessments to communicate with accommodators or test proctors. If there is internet capability, it must be disabled on the device during testing. A student using technology that may be distracting to another student should be tested in another location. Pages 8 and 9 of the regulation. Question 2. Is a number line that is pre-numbered appropriate to use on state assessments? The answer is no. A number line must be blank for a student to use on a state assessment. Manipulatives are meant to serve as something that triggers a student's memory of a process or how to solve a problem. Page 9. Question 3. Does the student have to request the reader to begin reading initially? The answer is no. The student does not have to request for the reader to begin reading. A student taking the general assessment does have to request a reread. Students taking the alternate assessment, which is scripted, do not have to request a reread. Pages 10 and 20. Question 4. On an online assessment, may the scribe click the answer choices for the student? Yes. The scribe may click answer choices, perform functions for technology-enhanced items, and type written responses as directed by the student. This concludes Module 3 of the Inclusion of Special Populations Regulation Training. Please progress through all 4 modules to complete the training. If you have any questions about anything we discussed or require further clarification, please contact our office by emailing dacinfo@education.ky.gov or by calling 502-564-4394.